In centuries past, this region was the world's economic powerhouse, where great dynasties pioneered innovations like the compass, printing, paper, and gunpowder. China, often referred to as the Middle Kingdom, stood at the center of the global economic stage alongside India. However, as the 1800s dawned, a shift was underway. Meanwhile, in Europe and the United States, a profound revolution unfolded, marked by advancements in science, machinery, weaponry, transportation, and industrialization. These Western nations embarked on a trajectory of territorial expansion, their power growing exponentially. When China retained its historical prominence as a great civilization, it faced an increasing challenge from the West, which arrived at its doorstep armed with superior technology. The inability to match the Western firepower led China to cede territories to Britain, including the renowned Hong Kong. China's experience with the Industrial Revolution diverged significantly from the Western world's, resulting in a substantial decline in its economic standing by the mid-1800s. A century later, China faced further adversity with its invasion by its neighbor, Japan. The economic prosperity of the Middle Kingdom was eroding, leaving it vulnerable to foreign occupation. After the conclusion of World War II, the Western powers introduced a new global economic and financial framework, founded on capitalism and free enterprise. This system, characterized by some government oversight and substantial taxation of the wealthy and corporations, aimed to replicate the economic success of the West. Post-World War II, capitalism was viewed as a miraculous solution, revitalizing nations like Germany, France, and Japan. This era witnessed a growing belief in minimizing government intervention in capitalism, allowing the market to function independently. A prominent advocate for this unfettered capitalism was Milton Friedman, a Chicago-based economist. Friedman's ideology emphasized that the primary responsibility of a business was to maximize profits for its shareholders. The core concept was that by increasing short-term gains for shareholders, society as a whole would benefit. The data, particularly in the United States and Western countries, appeared to substantiate Friedman's perspective, at least to some extent. In the Western world, particularly in the United States, the adoption of corporate free market capitalism ushered in an era of immense prosperity. But the question arises, what about China, the Middle Kingdom? While Western and U.S. economies thrived under the influence of corporate capitalism, China resisted, opting for a one-party communist system under the leadership of Mao Zedong, which essentially quashed any hopes of economic prosperity. By the 1970s, China was grappling with widespread poverty, a far cry from its once dominant position. However, a turning point was on the horizon. Enter Deng Xiaoping, the new leader of China in the 1970s. His mission was to reverse the 150 years of China's humiliation and decline, seeking to catch up with the global economic advances. While China's neighbors in the region thrived by embracing capitalism and experienced economic miracles, Deng Xiaoping embarked on a journey to revitalize China's economy. Deng took inspiration from places like Singapore, where ethnic Chinese had flourished under a free market system. It was clear that the Maoist economic doctrine had failed, and it was time to experiment with some form of capitalism. However, this transition had to be executed cautiously to avoid disrupting the established one-party rule. Deng's solution was to designate a small village in southern China, located just across the border from the capitalist hub of British-controlled Hong Kong. This village, home to around 30,000 people, became a special economic zone where foreign companies could invest and operate within a capitalist free market framework. Hong Kong acted as a bridge between Western businesses and China's socialist system, infused with Chinese capitalist characteristics. This marked the beginning of China's remarkable economic transformation. What unfolds next is undeniably one of the most astounding economic phenomena ever witnessed on our planet. It's a story that defies imagination. Imagine a small, tranquil village, once a special economic zone in China, that metamorphosed from a peaceful fishing community with a few thousand residents and rice paddies into a sprawling metropolis teeming with over 10 million people. The average income in this village skyrocketed from a meager $1 a day to an impressive annual income of over $30,000. This awe-inspiring transformation didn't stop there. It rippled across China. While this miraculous evolution was unfolding in China, Milton Friedman in the US could confidently say, "I told you so." The story is characterized by a flurry of Chinese cities designated for special economic activity, in essence, embracing capitalism within the framework of a socialist country. Foreign companies couldn't resist the allure of China's inexpensive labor force, and it rapidly became the world's factory. China joined the wave of other Asian economies but soon outpaced them all, emerging as the world's second largest economy. The transformation is vividly depicted in a graph. This year, Asia is poised to surpass the rest of the world, accounting for more than 50% of global GDP, marking a monumental economic shift and unveiling the secret behind China's extraordinary rise to power. However, amidst this triumphant narrative of capitalism's capacity to lift millions from poverty and expedite industrialization, there's another facet to the story that warrants our attention. This chart, known as the elephant graph or elephant curve, is a visual representation that depicts changes in the global income distribution over a specific period, typically from 1988 to 2008. The graph gets its name from its unique shape, which resembles an elephant with a raised trunk. On one axis, you have every individual on Earth, ranked by their income, divided into percentiles. The graph takes us from the 10th percentile, the lowest 10% of income earners globally, through the 20th percentile, and so on, until we reach the 90th percentile, representing the world's wealthiest. The other axis showcases the income growth experienced by these various percentiles over the past 35 years, a period that coincided with the zenith of shareholder capitalism and China's ascendancy. When we start examining the income growth experienced by different groups over the past 35 years, the bottom 10%, living in some of the world's poorest countries, witnessed a respectable income growth of about 75%. Not a bad progression. Moving to the 20 to 30% income bracket, we see a remarkable growth, well over 125% during this period. This segment represents the emerging middle class in countries like China, who reaped significant benefits from globalization. They thrived under this system. However, as we progress to the 50th, 60th, 70th, and 80th percentiles, which roughly encompasses the middle class in the Western world, the picture changes. Their income growth has been much slower, sometimes below 50% over the span of 35 years, a little over 1% per year, signifying meager income growth. Furthermore, some individuals in the West experienced income declines, especially blue-collar workers in regions like Detroit and the Rust Belt, as their jobs shifted to China. So far, this aligns with a logical outcome. Those in China who benefited from industrialization reaped substantial rewards, while many in the West encountered slower income growth or even losses due to job relocations. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When we focus on the groups hovering around the 99th percentile, essentially the richest 1% globally, their income growth over the past 35 years reveals an astonishing explosion. Their income tripled during this period. It's crucial to remember that this data covers 35 years and encompasses every economy worldwide, offering a comprehensive view of who the victors and victims are in this era of shareholder capitalism that swept through Asia and beyond. The top 1% income earners emerged as the greatest beneficiaries of this system, disproportionately profiting from shareholder capitalism and the expansion of globalization. Now, let's move on to the second graph. This chart illustrates the volume of CO2 emissions by country. You can spot Europe and the United States, and at the top, you'll find China, the world's leading emitter of CO2. Similar to the elephant graph, This graph amalgamates extensive data to spotlight how shareholder capitalism's fixation on short-term profits for shareholders often sidelines any considerations about how economic activities impact our planet and our ability to inhabit it. The story of China's ascent often revolves around how capitalism has lifted tens of millions and even hundreds of millions out of poverty, and it undeniably has, which is indeed remarkable. However, these graphs also shed light on the other side of this version of capitalism, the incentives and outcomes it promotes. The renowned economist Milton Friedman aptly noted that what may be suitable for one stage in the development of an economy might not be appropriate for another stage. This idea underscores the importance of our capitalism evolving to address contemporary challenges.